Greetings. This is the one you've known as Jesus the Christ. The fear of poverty. Everyone has this fear, but only some are affected by it to the extent that it shapes their lives. For some, this fear drives them to put money ahead of everything else: happiness, relationships, family, even work they would love to do. They choose their profession based on the salary rather than on other criteria. They choose security over their own happiness, believing that security will make them happy. But security is not the source of happiness. How could it be? Security is just one more unattainable concept the ego strives for. Those who put money first usually do get money, but often at the expense of other things, such as love, honesty, and ethical behavior. When money is your God, then godly values suffer. These are individuals for whom the ends often justify the means, who may lack scruples, who are self-serving and have little respect for those they might take advantage of. This is the ego for you. Ironically, these individuals, regardless of how much they make, never feel secure enough, because the ego never has enough to feel secure. Security doesn't come from having a certain amount of money, but from within oneself, from a sense of trust in life and in oneself. Since the ego is incapable of such trust, if you're identified with it, security is always out of reach. These individuals seem to be driven by greed, by wanting more and more things or power. But what they really want is to just, for once and for all, feel safe, like they have enough to just rest. But this will never happen if they remain in the egoic state of consciousness. Others whose lives are shaped by the fear of poverty often find themselves underachieving and just getting by financially, since this fear often interferes with creating a fulfilling and prosperous life. To have such a life would take some risk, confidence, and trust, and that possibility seems too scary. These individuals often take jobs and stay in jobs they hate, ones that don't suit them, because they're afraid that if they were to do what they want, they wouldn't be able to pay the bills. This fear leads to a life of limitation and burden instead of the life they're meant to live. Day in and day out they do work they don't like, but they see no other option, because they don't let themselves entertain any other options. If you don't entertain other possibilities, those possibilities surely won't manifest. Fear keeps people from living a life that would make them happy. That life awaits everyone. No one is destined for a life they don't want to live. They choose to live an unsatisfying life because they're afraid to pursue happiness. They trade safety and security for happiness. But that is a false dichotomy, a false choice, one that doesn't have to be made, but one that is nonetheless made all the time by those who don't trust that they can be both happy and supported. Everyone has a purpose. Sometimes that purpose has nothing to do with career, but even when it doesn't, life will support your endeavors somehow. So, for instance, if following your heart means being an artist, then life will either support you at that or present you with suitable job opportunities or other kinds of support for your art. Life doesn't provide for everyone equally. Some people make an impressive living from art, while most do not. But that's no reason to not pursue art if it makes your heart sing. You are here to fulfill a purpose, and you do that by following your heart. Life will support you one way or another as you follow your heart. That's one thing you can be certain of. Why would the soul choose a purpose and then not provide support for that. This is the bargain you have with God, if you will. I'll fulfill my life purpose, and you'll guide that and present me with ways to support that. If I lose my way, you'll do what you can to help me find my way. What interferes with this bargain is believing that the answers to how to live your life come from the voice in your head. This is the general assumption at humanity's current level of evolution. Humanity hasn't awakened sufficiently out of the primitive egoic mind to realize that it isn't the true guide, but a false guide, hence all the suffering on earth. Enough have realized that there's another way, however, and there have always been teachings that have pointed to the heart as the way. This is actually a rather advanced teaching, as the heart is more subtle and nuanced than the egoic mind, more difficult to interpret and understand, and so takes more courage to follow. The egoic mind is all about security and safety. It is the primitive aspect of the human being that relates to survival. But because the ego is antiquated, it turns out that the ego isn't so helpful, even for survival. The ego is divorced from reality, the present moment, so it is a poor guide for how to move moment to moment. Furthermore, the ego is divorced from the heart, and so knows nothing of your soul's plan, while the heart is there to guide and shape that plan. The heart is what you want guiding your life, since it has the map, the plan. The ego doesn't have a map, although it pretends to. It makes up a plan that's driven by its values, which are safety and security, not love, happiness, unity, and well-being. If you follow the egoic mind, you might very well get more money, but you're unlikely to get fulfillment, happiness, love, and peace, because the ego knows nothing of these. If you follow the heart, on the other hand, the reward is fulfillment, happiness, love, and peace. And because the heart will supply you with what you need when you follow it, support will also be available. Support for your life may come in a variety of ways: through an inheritance, a job, a gift, a loan or grant, a relationship, or a talent you have. And because the fulfillment you get from following your heart is its own reward, you won't find yourself needing as much materially to be content as you would if you pursued the ego's plans. Some of the most miserable people on earth aren't necessarily the poor, as you might expect, but the very wealthy, many of whom have lost touch with the true source of happiness and peace, and are on the hamster wheel of forever striving for more and better, and never feeling they have enough. Immersion in the ego's viewpoint and goals often results in addictions to food, shopping, alcohol, drugs, sex, which help assuage one's unhappiness and cope with the stress created by the push to get more. Material wealth will never satisfy. Only alignment with the heart satisfies, and material acquisition often interferes with that, although not always. Poverty can also keep people from aligning with their true nature. Many are too exhausted, afraid, downtrodden, or bitter to find peace within difficult circumstances. Nevertheless, poverty is relative and largely a state of mind. A lack of money by itself doesn't cause unhappiness. Many who have almost nothing are still happy because they're in touch with what they do have, love and life. Those who are the happiest are the ones who've been able to keep their heart open and the love flowing to others and to life, despite their circumstances. The love they feel and the relationships they have support them and are a source of happiness and contentment, and that's often enough. Their secret is that they're grateful for the gift of life and grateful for what they do have, and they don't focus on what they don't have. Happiness is largely a matter of focusing on what you have instead of on what you don't have. Unhappiness is a state of mind in which you focus on what you don't have and overlook or discount what you do have. There's no reason to fear poverty, even if you're currently experiencing it. Like every fear, poverty is an idea, a concept. There's no such thing as poverty. You can be, but you can't actually be poor. I am poor is a sad story that will make you sad if you believe it. What does poverty mean to you? What do you believe poverty means about you? The answer to that question is where much of the suffering in so-called poverty lies. The actual experience of not having much money depends on your attitude toward life and your relationship to yourself and others, not on the amount of money in your bank account. And I can guarantee that those who relate from love will attract the people and opportunities they need to get by and even prosper. People don't need that much materially to survive and be happy, but today in your modern world, many believe they do, so then they do. They don't know how to be happy with less. They believe so dearly in the lie that money equals happiness. They suffer over not being able to keep up with the Joneses. They suffer over what they think their life should look like or what they want their life to look like, which is mostly what television and other purveyors of culture tell them they need and should want in order to be happy. So when they don't have these things, they feel unhappy. If you believe you can't be happy unless you have something, then that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You won't be happy unless you have it, simply because you believe you can't be happy without it. But it's not things or a lack of things that makes people happy or unhappy, but rather their ideas about what having or not having these things means about their life and their identity. What would that mean if you had very little money? Would it mean you were a loser, unsuccessful in life, a failure, stupid, that you would never be loved, that you would have no friends? What meaning do you give to not having money or a nice car or home? Ideas such as loser, failure, unloved, and so forth are concepts or stories about the false self. These concepts have nothing to do with who you really are. They're labels for the image of yourself that lives inside your head, not even necessarily what others think of you. If you show others that you're strong and confident and good, that's how they'll think of you. If you're aligned with your best self, that's who they'll see. They can only see you as a loser or as poor if you see yourself that way. Being poor is not an identity most people want. No one wants to be poor, and no one is poor. That's just a label. Everyone is much more than their bank account. Even if you were the poorest person on the planet, being poor doesn't have to be your identity. You are not poor, but the son or daughter of an abundant Father. You are rich with inner gifts, potential, and the ability to love. This makes everyone rich. Identify with your true nature, not false concepts such as poor. Not having money stirs up other fears, like not surviving and not being loved and accepted by others. But I assure you that if you're meant to survive, then life will find a way to support you. And I assure you that no loving heart has ever gone unloved, because they had little on a material level. Some of the most shining people on this planet, many monks for instance, are revered for their love and simple lifestyle. You are this shining self. When your false identities are stripped away, as monks choose to do, that's an opportunity for the pearl of great price within to be revealed. Let love be your currency. Then everyone is equally rich. Love is what is important, and no one has a shortage of love. It is your greatest gift and your greatest resource in life. Most people on the planet and your institutions are driven by the ego and its values, as exemplified by Western materialism, which is why your planet is in trouble. The ego's drive to get more and better is gobbling up your resources and not making anyone happier. Most people in your country have much more than they need, and they still want more. If people were to share what was left over after their basic needs were met, there would be more than enough food and other resources for all. But just as it's difficult for you to shift out of the egoic state of consciousness, it's difficult for the human race as a whole too. But that is what's happening and needs to happen for everyone to have a better world, or even to have a world. You are in the midst of a shift in consciousness, which is coming about in part through necessity. The problems in your world are creating and will continue to create the suffering that's often required to wake people up out of their old ways and into a new way of being. Hopefully, this will happen sooner rather than later. Poverty is a concept, an idea, one that makes you afraid. All fears are just ideas, fantasies of a scary possible future that isn't real. The ideas or stories about what it means to be poor or not have the money you want scare you. You think, I don't want that. But what is that? Do you really know what it's like to be unsure of where your next meal comes from? Few of you listening to this actually know what this feels like. That's how blessed and taken care of you are. You use the fact that there are people who are starving or homeless to scare yourself into believing that that could happen to you, as unlikely as that is. If it's in your soul's plan to experience this type of limitation as a means for growth, then you surely will, and if it's not, you won't. You are always having the right experience for your soul's growth. There are no mistakes, and challenges such as poverty are not punishment but teaching tools. If you don't need that lesson, you won't have it. Poverty, like any other challenge, is an opportunity to discover what it's like to be in this predicament and discover for yourself the inner and outer resources available to support you in this experience and help you learn and grow from it. Poverty, like all challenges, can bring out either the best in people or the worst. It's a choice. As with every challenge, if you find yourself without money, it's an opportunity to make the right choice, to choose love over fear, trust over despair, optimism over pessimism, strength over bitterness. Challenges are tests that are designed to teach you to make the right choice, one that in the face of a difficulty will lead to acceptance, peace, and love, rather than blame, bitterness, and victimhood. Everyone is learning a similar lesson, and those who are making the right choice are everyone's teachers. Life is all about love. Every experience is designed to bring you closer to love, acceptance, compassion, and wisdom. If you choose to get closer to the negative side of life instead, that is your choice. You can freely choose that, but you won't like the results. Life steers you in the direction you're meant to go in by making the right choice more rewarding. Peace and happiness are more rewarding than unhappiness and victimhood. So why wouldn't you always choose peace? Human nature is governed by an ego which is designed to choose fear over love. To experience a better outcome, you must learn to master your ego. Mastery of the ego is the next step in humanity's evolution. This step has to be taken, and is being taken, but it's still difficult to make the right choice. You're giving birth to a new state of consciousness, and that isn't easy, and it's bound to be quite painful as you continue to suffer under the old suppositions and misunderstandings. But humanity will get there. As with all fears, trust is the antidote to the fear of poverty. What do you believe about life? Do you trust life? Do you believe that life provides? Do you believe that spiritual forces are guiding your evolution and helping you learn and grow while they support you in this? What do you believe is behind life? Nothing? Benevolence? Evil? These are important questions. Your beliefs about life matter. They create a particular inner climate, a lens through which you see the world, one that will make your way either easier or harder. If you believe that there isn't a benevolent force behind life, that life has no purpose or plan, it will be hard for you to trust life, and you'll probably fall back on your default. You'll trust what the voice in your head tells you about life, that life is scary and untrustworthy. You'll believe your fears, and your fears will shape your life. But they don't have to. Letting your fears shape your life is a choice. At some point, in this lifetime or when it's over, you'll discover that's not a choice that leads to happiness and peace. The reason it doesn't is that your fears are a lie, and letting a lie rule your life is bound to turn out badly. When you let the truth rule your life will blossom and you'll be happy. The truth about life is good news. Goodness and benevolence are behind life. This is what you're meant to discover. Life is good, and you discover this by believing this, or at least holding that belief as a possibility, which will help you see that it is true. You are meant to discover that life is good, but you may first have to trust that it's good before you discover this. If you believe life is dangerous, random, and meaningless, it will be much more difficult to discover this. Fear is the enemy of love, and trust is the antidote. Trust in love, believe in love, and you'll practice love. And when you practice love, you'll begin to trust in life. Practice love instead of fear. I say practice because fear is the default, and to go against the default and weaken it takes practice, choice. You must choose love over fear, trust over distrust, being open over being closed. When you're open to discovering that life is good, you will see the goodness, the support, the help, the abundance. When you're not, you'll overlook these and feel bereft, empty, lacking. This is the egoic state. The default is to feel empty, separate, and lacking. But that is a lie, and you're here to wake up from this lie. Thank you for being here. I am with you always.